The black Rolls-Royce stopped in front of a green-painted iron gate. The autumn wind swept fallen leaves across the cracked Pungur pavement, and beyond the gate stood a large, simple building with faded white walls and windows that had seen better days. Lily pressed her small face against the window glass, her breath forming little clouds on the cold surface. Her light green eyes sparkled with curiosity as she observed the unfamiliar place. "Daddy, what is this place?" she asked, turning to look at the man in the driver's seat. Dominic Ashford turned off the engine and looked at his daughter through the rearview mirror. At 37 years old, he was the most powerful and feared man in New York. His name alone could make grown men tremble. His cold gray eyes had witnessed things that would haunt ordinary people for lifetimes. But when those eyes met his daughter's innocent gaze, they softened completely. With Lily, he was not Dominic Ashford, the man whose empire stretched across the city's darkest corners. He was simply Daddy. "This is St. Mary's orphanage, Princess," he said gently. "It's a place where children live when they don't have families to take care of them." Lily furrowed her blonde eyebrows, processing this information. "They don't have a mommy or a daddy?" "No, sweetheart. Some children aren't as lucky as you." "That's very sad," Lily whispered, her small hand reaching for her father's. Dominic squeezed her fingers. This was one of the few clean activities of the Ashford family, a monthly donation that he had started 6 years ago. 6 years. The same amount of time since Elena had left this world, leaving him with a newborn daughter and a heart that would never fully heal. "That's why we come here," he explained, stepping out of the car. "When we can help, we help. That's what your mother would have wanted." At the mention of her mother, Lily nodded solemnly. She never knew Elena, but she knew her mother was an angel watching over them from heaven. Daddy had told her so. They walked toward the entrance, Dominic carrying 2 boxes of supplies, while Lily clutched a bag of toys she had personally chosen to donate. The gate creaked as it opened, revealing a small garden where a few children were playing. Mrs. Patricia Hayes, the director, greeted them at the door with a warm smile. "Mr. Ashford, how wonderful to see you again." As they entered the main hall, Lily looked around with wide eyes. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow, decorated with children's drawings. The smell of homemade food drifted from somewhere inside, and then Lily saw her. In the farthest corner of the room, near a large window, sat a small figure in a wheelchair. The girl's back was turned to them, her gaze fixed on something outside. Her hair was blonde, almost golden in the afternoon light streaming through the glass. It fell over her thin shoulders like spun silk. Something stirred in Lily's chest, a strange feeling she couldn't name. She tugged at her father's hand, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Daddy, that girl over there." Dominic looked down at his daughter, then followed her gaze to the corner. "What about her, Princess?" Lily's green eyes were wide, filled with wonder and something close to recognition. "She looks just like me." Dominic stared at the girl in the wheelchair, and a strange sensation crawled up his spine. Something about the way she sat, the curve of her small shoulders, the shade of her golden hair. It was like looking at a ghost, like looking at someone he had met before, in another lifetime. But that was impossible. Before he could say anything, Lily slipped her hand from his grasp and ran across the room. Her little feet pattered against the wooden floor, carrying her toward the corner where the mysterious girl sat alone. "Lily, wait," Dominic called out, but his daughter was already gone. The girl in the wheelchair was drawing. Her small hands moved a colored pencil across the paper with careful, deliberate strokes. She was creating a bird with outstretched wings, soaring across a bright blue sky. The detail was remarkable for someone so young. When Lily's shadow fell across the paper, the girl flinched. She quickly covered the drawing with both hands, her shoulders hunching as if expecting criticism. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'll put it away." "Why would you put it away?" Lily asked, tilting her head. "It's beautiful. That bird looks like it's really flying." The girl slowly looked up, and for the first time, Lily saw her face clearly. Light green eyes, the same shade as her own, met her gaze. A small nose, pale pink lips. It was like looking into a mirror. You think it's beautiful?" the girl asked hesitantly. "I think it's amazing. I can't draw like that." Lily smiled brightly and sat down on the floor beside the wheelchair. "I'm Lily. What's your name?" "Rose," the girl answered, her voice soft as wind through leaves. "Rose, that's a pretty name. Like the flower." Lily pointed at the drawing. "Do you like birds?" "I like watching them fly," Rose said quietly. "They can go anywhere they want. They're free." Something in those words made Lily's heart ache, though she didn't fully understand why. "Have you always lived here, Rose?" Rose nodded, her eyes dropping to her lap. Since I was a baby. I don't know who my mommy or daddy are. Nobody wanted me because of..." She gestured at the wheelchair beneath her. "Because of this? Because of your chair?" Lily frowned. "But your chair has wheels. It's like having a superpower for moving around. You can roll everywhere without getting tired." Rose blinked several times, as if she had never considered this perspective. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. A real smile that reached her eyes and transformed her whole expression. It was identical to Lily's smile. The same curve of lips, the same crinkle at the corners of the eyes. At that moment, Mrs. Hayes walked past carrying a stack of papers. She glanced at the two girls sitting together and stopped abruptly. The papers nearly slipped from her hands. Her eyes went wide, darting between Lily and Rose, between one face and the other, two faces that were almost perfectly identical. "Good heavens," she breathed. From across the room, Dominic watched the same scene unfold. His heart began to pound against his ribs. His hands grew cold. Two blonde heads bent together, two pairs of green eyes, two smiles that mirrored each other like reflections in still water. "It can't be," he whispered to himself. "It's impossible." But the evidence was right in front of him, and Dominic Ashford had not built his empire by ignoring what his eyes could clearly see. Dominic's mind was racing. The resemblance between the two girls was too striking, too precise to be mere coincidence. He had learned long ago that in his world, coincidences were rarely what they seemed. He approached Mrs. Hayes, who was still standing frozen in the hallway, her eyes fixed on the two children. "Mrs. Hayes," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of authority that made people obey without question. "I need to speak with you, privately, now." The director nodded, still visibly shaken. "Of course, Mr. Ashford. Please, follow me to my office." They walked down a narrow corridor lined with children's artwork. Mrs. Hayes closed the door behind them and gestured to a chair, but Dominic remained standing. He was not a man who sat when he needed answers. "Tell me about Rose," he said. "Everything you know." Mrs. Hayes clasped her hands together nervously. "Rose has been with us since she was an infant, Mr. Ashford. She arrived when she was only a few hours old." "When exactly?" 6 years ago. The night of March 15th. Dominic felt as if someone had poured ice water into his veins. March 15th. The same night Lily was born. The same night Elena had died in his arms. "Who brought her here?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "A woman. She was wearing a nurse's uniform. I remember that clearly. It was past midnight when she knocked on our door." Mrs. Hayes paused, retrieving a memory she had not thought about in years. She was terrified, kept looking over her shoulder as if someone was following her. "Did she say anything? Leave anything behind?" "Just a note." Mrs. Hayes walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out an old folder. "We keep records of all our children. Here it is." She handed Dominic a small piece of paper, yellowed with age. The handwriting was hurried, almost frantic. "Please take care of her. Her name is Rose. Nothing else. No explanation. No information about parents or family." "What about her condition?" Dominic asked, his throat tight. "The wheelchair." Mrs. Hayes sighed sadly. "Rose was born with paralysis in her legs. The doctors who examined her said it was likely caused by oxygen deprivation during birth, some kind of complication during delivery." Complications during delivery. The exact words Dr. Marcus Webb had used to explain why Elena had died. Complications that had taken his wife from him in a matter of minutes. Dominic's hands began to tremble. He pressed them flat against his thighs to steady himself. "Elena," he thought. "Did you give me 2 daughters that night? Did someone take one of them away from me?" He remembered standing outside the delivery room, hearing the cries of a newborn. Now that he thought about it, had there been more than one cry? Had the sounds overlapped in ways he had been too grief-stricken to notice? Dr. Webb had come out with a baby in his arms. Just one baby. He had said Elena was gone, that there had been complications, that they had done everything they could, and Dominic had believed him. For 6 years, he had believed every word. "Mr. Ashford?" Mrs. Hayes's voice pulled him back. "Are you all right? You've gone very pale." Dominic did not answer. He turned and walked out of the office, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. When he reached the living room, he stopped in the doorway. Lily was sitting on the floor beside Rose's wheelchair. Their golden heads were bent close together, nearly touching. Lily was teaching Rose how to fold a paper airplane, her small hands guiding Rose's fingers through each crease. "Like this, see?" Lily said. "And then you fold this part down, and it can fly." Rose laughed softly, and the sound was like hearing Lily's laughter echo twice. Dominic watched them, his heart breaking and rebuilding itself in the same moment. He did not know the full truth yet, but he would find it. no matter what it cost. The afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting long golden shadows across the orphanage floor. Dominic glanced at his watch and knew they had to leave, but when he looked at his daughter, he saw that leaving would not be easy. Lily was holding Rose's hand tightly, her small fingers intertwined with Rose's as if they had known each other for years instead of hours. "Lily, princess," Dominic said gently, "it's time to go home." Lily's face crumpled. She shook her head, her blonde curls bouncing. "Not yet, Daddy. Please. Just a little longer." Rose looked down at their joined hands. Her eyes were turning red, but she forced a small smile onto her face. It was a practiced smile, one that had been used many times before. "It's okay, Lily," she said softly. "I'm used to it. Everyone leaves eventually." The words were spoken without bitterness, only quiet acceptance, and somehow that made them even more heartbreaking. Lily spun around to face her father. Her green eyes were swimming with tears that threatened to spill over at any moment. "Daddy, can I come back, please? I promise I'll be good. I'll eat all my vegetables and go to bed on time and never complain about anything ever again." The words tumbled out in a desperate rush. "Please, Daddy, please." Dominic looked at his daughter, then at Rose, then back at Lily. His mind was already racing with plans, with investigations that needed to begin, with questions that demanded answers. But his heart saw only two little girls who had found each other against impossible odds. "Yes, princess," he said. "We'll come back." Lily's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. She turned back to Rose and grabbed both of her hands. "Did you hear that? I'm coming back. I promise." Rose's eyes widened. "You promise? Really promise? Really, really promise?" Then Lily did something that made Dominic's breath catch in his throat. She reached up and unclasped the delicate silver chain from around her neck. A small star pendant dangled from it, catching the fading light. It was Elena's necklace, the last gift his wife had given their daughter before she died. Lily had worn it every single day for as long as she could remember. "Here," Lily said, carefully placing the necklace around Rose's neck. "So you remember me. So you know I'm coming back." Rose touched the star pendant with trembling fingers. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had never owned anything before. Everything at the orphanage was shared, passed from child to child. Nothing was truly hers. Until now. "It's beautiful," Rose whispered. "It was my mommy's," Lily explained. "She's in heaven now, but I think she would want you to have it." A single tear rolled down Rose's cheek, then another. She couldn't stop them. "Thank you, Lily. Thank you." The drive home was quiet at first. Dominic focused on the road while his mind churned with thoughts he couldn't yet speak aloud. But Lily could not stay silent for long. "Daddy, Rose draws so beautifully. She drew a bird that looked like it was really flying. And she tells the best stories, and she understands things that other kids don't understand. She's special, Daddy, really special." Dominic nodded, his eyes fixed ahead. "And Daddy?" Lily's voice dropped lower, almost hesitant. "Rose looks just like me. Exactly like me. The same hair, the same eyes, the same everything." She paused, gathering courage for her next words. "Daddy, could Rose be my sister? Like, my real sister?" Dominic's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The leather creaked under his grip. He thought about the date Rose arrived at the orphanage. He thought about the nurse who had disappeared into the night. He thought about Elena and the delivery room and the cries he had heard 6 years ago. "Maybe, princess," he said slowly. "Maybe she's even more than that." Lily tilted her head. "What do you mean, Daddy?" But Dominic did not answer. He just kept driving, while in his chest, a storm was beginning to build. The Ashford mansion stood like a dark fortress against the night sky. Inside his private study, Dominic sat behind his mahogany desk, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. The house was silent. Lily had fallen asleep hours ago, exhausted from the day's emotions. But Dominic could not rest. His mind kept returning to Rose, to her face, to her eyes, to the impossible truth that was taking shape in his thoughts. A knock came at the door. "Come in," Dominic said. Dante entered the room. At 35, he was Dominic's most trusted man, his right hand in all matters, both clean and otherwise. They had grown up together on the streets of New York, and Dante had proven his loyalty 1,000 times over. "You called for me, boss?" Dominic gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. We have work to do." Dante sat down, his sharp eyes immediately noticing the tension in Dominic's jaw, the storm brewing behind his calm exterior. "I need you to find something for me," Dominic began, his voice low and controlled. Everything about the night Elena gave birth. Hospital records, staff lists, security camera footage. Anyone who was present that night. Dante's eyebrows rose slightly, but he did not question. He never questioned. That was 6 years ago. Records might be difficult to find. Then dig deeper. I don't care what it takes. Dominic leaned back in his chair, and for a moment, his eyes grew distant. The memory came rushing back like a tide he could not stop. 6 years ago, the hospital corridor, the harsh fluorescent lights. He had been pacing outside the delivery room, his heart pounding with anticipation and fear. Elena had insisted on a private birth, attended only by Dr. Marcus Webb, the physician who had served the Ashford family for 2 decades. Then the cries had begun. Dominic remembered freezing mid-step, listening. The sound of a newborn's first breath, first scream. But now, thinking back, had there been something else? Had the cries overlapped? Had there been 2 voices instead of 1? He had been so focused on Elena, so desperate for her to be safe. Then Dr. Webb had emerged from the room. His face was pale. His hands were steady, but his eyes held something Dominic had not recognized at the time. "Mr. Ashford," Webb had said, "you have a daughter. She's healthy and strong. And Elena?" Dominic had asked, already knowing from Webb's expression that something was wrong. "I'm so sorry. There were complications. We did everything we could. After that, everything had become a blur. Grief had swallowed Dominic whole. He had taken the baby, his Lily, and he had not asked questions. He had trusted Webb completely. Perhaps that had been his greatest mistake. "Boss?" Dante's voice pulled him back to the present. Dominic blinked. "What did you find?" Dante pulled out a small notebook. "I made some calls on the way here. The hospital records from that night are missing. Officially listed as lost during a system transfer 3 years ago. Convenient," Dominic muttered. "And there's more. Several staff members who worked that night resigned within weeks of the delivery. No forwarding addresses, no explanations. They just vanished." Dominic's fingers tapped slowly against the desk. "Find them. Every single one. Start with the nurses who were on duty that night. It could take time, then don't waste any." Dominic's eyes hardened. "Someone took something from me, Dante. Something precious. And I intend to find out who." Dante nodded and rose to leave. At the door, he paused. "Boss, what exactly are we looking for?" Dominic stared at the darkness outside his window. "The truth. About my wife's death, and about a daughter I may have never known existed." Miles away, in the quiet dormitory of St. Mary's orphanage, Rose lay in her narrow bed. The room was dark, filled with the soft breathing of sleeping children. But Rose was not asleep. Her fingers were wrapped around the star pendant that hung from her neck. Lily's necklace, Lily's mother's necklace, the first thing that had ever truly belonged to her. She brought it close to her heart and closed her eyes. For the first time in her 6 years of life, Rose dreamed of having a family, a father who held her close, a sister who laughed beside her, a home where she belonged. And in her dream, she was not alone anymore. 3 days had passed since the visit to St. Mary's. Dominic had spent every waking moment analyzing, planning, and waiting for Dante's reports. But he knew he could not rely on investigation alone. He needed to look into the eyes of the man he had trusted for 20 years. He needed to see Dr. Marcus Webb. The invitation was simple, a routine health checkup for Lily. Nothing unusual, nothing that would raise suspicion. Dr. Webb arrived at the Ashford mansion precisely at 10 in the morning, carrying his familiar black medical bag. At 55 years old, he was a distinguished man with silver hair and steady hands that had delivered countless babies, performed countless procedures, saved countless lives, including the life of Dominic's own father, 15 years ago. A heart attack that should have been fatal. Webb had been there, had worked through the night, had pulled the old man back from death's door. That was why the Ashford family trusted him completely. That was why Dominic had never questioned him. Until now. "Dominic, my boy," Webb said warmly as he entered the study. "It's good to see you. Where is little Lily?" "She's upstairs with her nanny. She'll be down shortly." Dominic gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. Have some tea while we wait." Webb settled into the leather armchair, accepting the cup that Dominic offered. They exchanged pleasantries about the weather, about business, about the state of the city, normal conversation, comfortable conversation. Then, Dominic shifted the tone. "Marcus," he said casually, leaning back in his chair, "I've been thinking about Elena lately." Webb's expression softened with practiced sympathy. "Understandable. The anniversary of her passing is approaching, isn't it?" Yes, 6 years. Dominic paused, letting the silence stretch. I find myself remembering that night. The delivery, everything that happened. A tragic night, Webb agreed, but also a blessed one. Elena gave you Lily before she left this world. She did. Dominic's eyes fixed on Webb's face, watching for any flicker of discomfort. Tell me, Marcus. That night in the delivery room, you're certain there was only one child? The question hung in the air like smoke. Webb did not flinch. His face remained calm, his voice steady. Of course, Dominic. I delivered Lily myself, held her in my own hands. There was only one baby. No complications before Elena passed? Nothing unusual? Nothing beyond what I reported at the time. The placental abruption was sudden and severe. We did everything possible, but Webb shook his head sadly. Some things are beyond medicine. Dominic nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. But he was watching Webb's hands as they lifted the teacup. There was a tremor there, slight, barely noticeable, but present. And when Webb turned his head to glance out the window, something cold flashed through his eyes, something that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Well, Webb said, setting down his cup, shall we see to Lily's checkup? The examination was brief and routine. Webb pronounced Lily perfectly healthy, packed his bag, and prepared to leave. Dominic walked him to the door, shaking his hand with the same warmth he always showed. But as Webb's car pulled away from the mansion, Dominic stood at the window, watching until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. 20 years of trust. And now every instinct screamed that he had been deceived. Inside his car, Dr. Marcus Webb loosened his tie with shaking fingers. His heart was pounding. His palms were slick with sweat. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had memorized long ago. The call connected after 2 rings. He's asking questions, Webb said, his voice low and urgent. About the night Elena gave birth. He's suspicious. Faster than I anticipated. The voice on the other end was cold, emotionless. What did you tell him? The same story. One child, complications. But he didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. A long pause. Then Vincent Romano spoke again. Leave Ashford to me. I'll handle this. And the girl? The one at the orphanage? Romano's voice turned to ice. That child should have died 6 years ago. If Ashford gets too close, we'll finish what should have been done from the beginning. The line went dead. Webb stared at his phone, his hands still trembling. He had made a deal with the devil 20 years ago, and now the flames were finally catching up. 1 week later, the black Rolls-Royce returned to St. Mary's orphanage. Lily had barely slept the night before, too excited to close her eyes. She had packed a small bag with her favorite doll, coloring pencils, and drawing paper, everything she thought Rose might enjoy. When they arrived, Mrs. Hayes met them at the entrance with a knowing smile. Mr. Ashford, Lily, Rose has been waiting for you. She has? Lily's eyes sparkled with joy. Every single day, Mrs. Hayes said softly. Every morning, the first thing she asks is when Lily will come back. I've never seen her so hopeful. Lily grabbed her bag and rushed inside, leaving Dominic standing with the director. He watched his daughter disappear around the corner, his heart heavy with emotions he could not name. She hasn't taken off the necklace, Mrs. Hayes added quietly. Not once. She sleeps with it clutched in her hand. Dominic said nothing. He simply nodded and followed the path his daughter had taken. In the garden behind the orphanage, Rose was already waiting. Her wheelchair was positioned near a wooden table, and her eyes were fixed on the doorway. The moment she saw Lily running toward her, her entire face transformed. Lily! Rose! Lily threw her arms around Rose, nearly knocking the wheelchair backward. Rose laughed and hugged her back just as tightly. I brought things, Lily announced, dumping her bag onto the table. Look, my favorite doll, and pencils, and paper. We can draw together. Rose touched the colored pencils with reverent fingers. These are so beautiful. They're for both of us. Sisters share everything. The word hung in the air between them. Sisters. Neither of them questioned it. It simply felt true. They spent the next hour drawing side by side. Lily created pictures of butterflies and flowers, her strokes wild and enthusiastic. Rose worked more carefully, her lines precise and thoughtful. When Lily looked over at Rose's paper, she tilted her head curiously. What are you drawing? Rose hesitated. Her cheeks flushed pink. It's nothing. It's not nothing. Show me. Slowly. Rose turned the paper around. It was a house, a beautiful house with a garden and tall windows. In front of the house stood 3 figures. 2 small girls with yellow hair, and 1 tall man with dark hair. Lily studied the picture carefully. Who are they? Rose's voice dropped to a whisper. It's my dream family, the family I wish I had. Something cracked inside Lily's chest. She looked at the drawing again, at the 2 girls holding hands, at the father figure standing protectively behind them. Rose, she said slowly, do you want to tell me about the orphanage? About living here? Rose's smile faded. She looked down at her hands, at the wheelchair beneath her. It's okay here, she said quietly. Mrs. Hayes is nice. The food is warm. But what? But I'm always alone. Rose's voice trembled. Other kids come and go. Families take them home. But nobody wants me. They look at my chair and they walk away. Lily listened, her young heart breaking. One time, Rose continued, a couple came to see me. The lady smiled at me and held my hand. I thought maybe they would take me home. But then the man saw my legs. He said raising a child who couldn't walk would be too difficult. They left and never came back. Tears were forming in Rose's eyes now, but she blinked them away quickly. She had learned long ago that crying didn't change anything. People say I'm too much trouble, she whispered. Because I can't run or jump or walk. They say no family would want that burden. Lily reached across the table and grabbed Rose's hand. That's not true, she said fiercely. You're not a burden. You're wonderful. Rose looked up, surprised by the intensity in Lily's voice. I want you to be my sister, Lily declared. My real sister. I don't care about the wheelchair. I don't care about walking or running. I just want you. For a moment, Rose couldn't speak. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled with tears she couldn't hold back. Really? She whispered. You really want me? More than anything in the whole world. The tears spilled over. But for the first time in Rose's life, they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. From across the garden, Dominic watched the 2 girls embrace. He saw Rose crying. He saw Lily stroking her hair, comforting her with words he couldn't hear. His chest tightened painfully. He knew now, with absolute certainty, that Rose was his daughter, his flesh and blood, his stolen child. Someone had taken her from him. Someone had condemned her to 6 years of loneliness and rejection. And whoever that person was, they would pay. That evening, Dante arrived at the Ashford mansion, with a folder tucked under his arm. His face was grim, his jaw set in a hard line. Dominic was waiting in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He hadn't touched it. He couldn't drink, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except finding the truth. What do you have? He asked as Dante entered. Dante placed the folder on the desk and opened it. Inside were photographs, documents, and handwritten notes. I tracked down the staff roster from the night Elena gave birth, Dante began. There were 4 nurses on duty in the maternity ward that night. I tried to find all of them. And 2 moved out of state within weeks of that night. No forwarding addresses. Their trails go cold almost immediately. Dante pointed to 2 photographs of middle-aged women. The 3rd nurse died in a car accident 3 years ago. Single vehicle, no witnesses. Dominic's eyes narrowed. Convenient. Very. Dante pulled out a 4th photograph. But the 4th nurse is interesting. Sarah Miller. She was the head nurse on duty that night. Worked at the hospital for 12 years with a perfect record. Then, the morning after Elena's delivery, she resigned without notice and disappeared. Dominic studied the photograph. Sarah Miller had kind eyes and a gentle face. She looked like someone who cared deeply about her patients. Where is she now? That took some digging. Dante flipped to another page. She's been living under a different name in a small town in Vermont. Keeps to herself. Works at a local pharmacy. Doesn't talk to anyone about her past. She's hiding, Dominic said quietly. That's what it looks like. Whatever happened that night, she's scared enough to run and stay hidden for 6 years. Dominic stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city lights glittered like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there, a woman held the answers he needed. Find her, he said without turning around. Bring her to me. And if she refuses, Dominic's voice hardened. Convince her, but bring her alive. She has information I need. Dante nodded and gathered the folder. I'll leave tonight. Should have her within 48 hours. After Dante left, Dominic remained at the window. His mind was churning with questions. Why had Sarah Miller run? What had she seen that night? And what did Dr. Webb have to hide? The answers were close now. He could feel them. At St. Mary's orphanage, Rose sat on her bed in the fading evening light. In her lap was a package wrapped in pink paper, delivered earlier that day by a courier. The card attached read simply, "For Rose, from Lily." Because everyone needs a friend. With trembling fingers, Rose tore open the wrapping. Inside was a doll. A beautiful doll with golden blonde hair and bright blue eyes, wearing a delicate white dress. Rose held it close to her chest, breathing in the newness of it. She had never owned a doll before. The toys at the orphanage were shared and worn, passed from child to child until they fell apart. But this doll was hers, only hers. "I'm going to call you Hope," she whispered to the doll, "because that's what Lily gave me." Hope. She hugged Hope tightly and lay back on her pillow. The star necklace pressed against her heart and the doll cradled in her arms. For the first time in 6 years, Rose fell asleep, smiling. Outside the orphanage gates, a black sedan sat in the shadows. The engine was off, but 2 men remained inside, watching. One of them lifted a phone to his ear. "Report," said the cold voice of Vincent Romano. "Ashford has visited the orphanage twice now. He's spending time with the girl, the one in the wheelchair." A long pause. "Is he asking questions?" "We don't know for certain, but his visits are increasing. He brought his daughter both times. They seem attached to the crippled girl." Romano's voice turned to ice. "He's getting too close. Keep watching. If Ashford discovers the truth, we handle the girl first. She should have been eliminated years ago. This time, we finish it." "Understood." The line went dead. Inside the sedan, the 2 men continued their silent vigil, their eyes fixed on the orphanage where an innocent child slept peacefully, unaware of the danger circling closer with each passing hour. The small town of Millbrook, Vermont, was the kind of place people went to disappear. Quiet streets, friendly neighbors who minded their own business, no questions asked. Dante found Sarah Miller living in a modest cottage at the edge of town. The house was unremarkable, except for one detail. Every window had 3 locks, the front door had 4. He knocked and waited. A shadow moved behind the curtain, then silence. "Sarah Miller," Dante called through the door. "I'm not here to hurt you. I work for Dominic Ashford. He needs to speak with you about the night his wife died." More silence. Then a voice, trembling and thin. "Go away. I don't know any Dominic Ashford." "Yes, you do. You were the head nurse the night Elena Ashford gave birth. 6 years ago. March 15th. The silence stretched longer this time. Dante could hear ragged breathing on the other side of the door. "Please," he said, softening his tone. "Mr. Ashford isn't looking for revenge. He's looking for his daughter." The locks clicked. 1, 2, 3, 4. The door opened a crack, revealing a woman in her late 40s. Her hair was gray now, her face lined with years of fear and sleepless nights. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying before he arrived. "His daughter?" she whispered. "He found a girl at an orphanage, a girl who looks exactly like his other daughter. He believes she might be his." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Oh God," she breathed. "She's alive. The baby is alive." An hour later, Dante called Dominic. The connection crackled briefly before stabilizing. "I have her, boss. She's willing to talk, but you need to hear this yourself." Within 12 hours, Dominic was sitting in Sarah Miller's small living room. The woman across from him looked like she had aged 20 years in the past 6. Her hands shook as she clutched a cup of tea she hadn't touched. "Tell me everything," Dominic said. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with barely contained fury. Sarah took a shaky breath. That night, Elena was so happy. She knew she was having twins, 2 girls. She had already named them, Lily and Rose. Dominic's heart stopped. Elena had known. She had chosen both names. The delivery was difficult, Sarah continued. The first baby came out healthy and strong. That was Lily. But the second baby, Rose, the umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck. She wasn't breathing at first. We managed to revive her, but the oxygen deprivation caused damage to her spine. Her legs would never work properly. Dominic's fists clenched. And Elena? Sarah's tears fell faster. She was bleeding, hemorrhaging badly. Dr. Webb said there was nothing we could do, but... She hesitated. But what? I saw his face when Elena died. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't even trying to save her at the end. Sarah's voice cracked. I think he let her die on purpose. The room went cold. Dominic felt the blood drain from his face. After Elena passed, Sarah whispered, "Dr. Webb came to me. He was holding Rose. He told me the baby was defective, that a crippled child would only be a burden to the Ashford family. He said it would be better if she simply disappeared." "And you agreed?" Dominic's voice was deadly quiet. "No, I refused. But then he threatened me." Sarah was sobbing now. "He said if I told anyone, He would kill me. Kill my family. He had connections, he said. Powerful people who wanted to hurt the Ashfords. He said if I didn't take the baby away, they would kill her instead. So you took her to the orphanage. Sarah nodded miserably. I thought at least there she would be safe. Someone might adopt her, give her a good life. I wrote her name on a piece of paper so they would know what to call her. She looked up at Dom. Why would Webb do this? He served my family for 20 years. Sarah shook her head. I don't know everything. But that night, before I left with Rose, I heard him on the phone with someone. He said the plan was working. He said the Ashford bloodline would suffer. Whoever he was talking to. They wanted to destroy your family. Dominic turned away, unable to look at her anymore. Webb, the man who had saved his father's life, the man he had trusted with his wife, his child, his entire family. 20 years of lies, 20 years of betrayal. You will testify to everything you've told me, Dominic said without turning around. In return, I will protect you. No one will ever hurt you again. Sarah wiped her eyes. You promise? Dominic finally looked at her. His gaze was cold as steel. I promise. And unlike Dr. Webb, I keep my word. Dominic returned to New York with a storm raging inside him. The words of Sarah Miller echoed in his mind like thunder that would not stop. Elena had known she was having twins. She had named both daughters. And someone had stolen one of them. The moment he arrived at the mansion, he summoned Dante to his study. I want everything on Marcus Webb, Dominic commanded. Birth records, family history, financial transactions, every detail of his life before he came to work for my family. Leave nothing uncovered. Dante nodded and disappeared into the night. For 3 days, Dominic waited. He did not sleep. He barely ate. He spent hours staring at a photograph of Elena, wondering how different their lives might have been if she had survived. If both their daughters had come home. On the 4th day, Dante returned with a thick folder and a grim expression. You're not gonna like this, boss. Tell me. Dante opened the folder and spread documents across the desk. Birth certificates, old photographs, newspaper clippings yellowed with age. Marcus Webb isn't his real name, Dante began. He was born Marcus Castellano, son of Antonio Castellano. Dominic's blood turned to ice. Antonio Castellano, a name he had not heard in decades. A name from his father's era, from the brutal gang wars that had shaped the Ashford Empire. The Castellano family, Dominic said slowly. They controlled the docks in the 80s, until your father wiped them out, Dante confirmed. 30 years ago, Antonio Castellano was killed in the final confrontation, shot dead by your father himself. Dominic stared at the old photograph in the folder. It showed a young man standing beside an older figure. The young man had the same eyes as Dr. Webb, the same sharp features, the same cold intelligence. Marcus was 25 when his father died, Dante continued. After the war ended, he disappeared, changed his name, went to medical school, built a completely new identity, and then he came to us. Dominic's voice was hollow. He applied to be your family's physician 15 years later. Your father was already sick by then. Webb saved his life during that heart attack, earned the family's trust completely. The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. 20 years. Marcus Castellano had spent 20 years worming his way into the heart of the Ashford family, healing their wounds, delivering their children, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when that moment came, he had taken everything. He killed Elena, Dominic whispered. He let her bleed out on that table while I stood outside, trusting him to save her. It gets worse, Dante said quietly. Sarah mentioned Webb was talking to someone on the phone that night. I traced his financial records. He's been receiving payments from an offshore account for years. The account is linked to Vincent Romano. The name hit Dominic like a physical blow. Vincent Romano was the head of the Romano crime family, the Ashfords' most bitter rival. For years, the two families had maintained an uneasy truce, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before war erupted again. Webb and Romano, Dominic said. They've been working together all along. It looks that way. Romano wanted to weaken your family. Webb wanted revenge for his father. They found common ground in destroying you. Dominic stood so suddenly that his chair crashed backward. His fist came down on the desk with devastating force, splitting the wood down the center. Papers scattered, glass shattered. 20 years, he roared. 20 years I trusted that man. I let him into my home. I let him touch my wife, my children. Dante stood motionless, weathering the storm of his boss's fury. Dominic's chest heaved. His hands were bleeding from the broken wood, but he felt nothing. The pain in his body was nothing compared to the agony in his heart. Elena, his beautiful Elena, she had died because of a grudge he knew nothing about. Rose had been stolen because of sins committed before she was even born. Slowly, Dominic regained control. His breathing steadied, his eyes hardened into cold steel. "Webb doesn't know we've discovered the truth," he said quietly. "We keep it that way. For now, and Romano, he'll get what's coming to him. They both will." Dominic looked at the photograph of Elena on his desk, now speckled with his own blood. "But first, I bring my daughter home. Rose has spent 6 years in that orphanage because of these men, not one day more." He straightened his jacket and wiped the blood from his hands. "Prepare everything. Tomorrow, I'm going to St. Mary's, and this time, I'm bringing Rose home where she belongs." The morning sun cast golden light across the grounds of St. Mary's orphanage as the black Rolls-Royce pulled through the iron gates once more. But this time, Dominic Ashford was not here to make a donation. He was here to bring his daughter home. Lily sat beside him in the back seat, bouncing with barely contained excitement. She didn't know everything, not yet, but she knew something wonderful was about to happen. Mrs. Hayes met them at the entrance, her expression curious. "Mr. Ashford, we weren't expecting you today." "I apologize for the short notice," Dominic said, "but I have something important to discuss with you. In private, if possible." They walked to her office, leaving Lily in the common room with instructions to wait. The little girl immediately ran to find Rose, who was sitting by the window as always, Hope the doll clutched in her arms. Inside the office, Dominic wasted no time. "I want to adopt Rose." Mrs. Hayes stared at him. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Mr. Ashford, are you certain?" "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." The director's eyes filled with tears. She pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed by emotion. 6 years, she whispered. "In 6 years, you are the first person who has ever wanted her. So many families came and looked at her, but the wheelchair always scared them away. They saw her disability before they saw her heart. Then they were fools," Dominic said quietly. "Rose is extraordinary. Anyone who cannot see that doesn't deserve her." Mrs. Hayes wiped her eyes and nodded. "There will be paperwork, background checks, home inspections. The process usually takes months. I understand, and I want everything done properly, by the book, completely legal." Dominic's voice hardened slightly. "No shortcuts, no loopholes. I want Rose's adoption to be unbreakable, so that no one can ever take her from me again." Mrs. Hayes studied him for a moment, sensing there was more to this than simple charity. But she asked no questions. She had learned long ago that some blessings were best accepted without examination. "I'll begin the paperwork immediately," she said. "Given your resources and reputation, we can expedite the process while still following all legal requirements. Thank you." Dominic rose and walked to the door. Then he paused. "There's one more thing. Rose doesn't know yet. I would like to tell her myself." In the common room, Rose and Lily were sitting together, their golden heads bent over a coloring book. Rose was showing Lily how to blend colors to create a sunset sky. "See, you start with yellow, then add orange on top, then pink at the edges. That's so pretty," Lily breathed. "You're the best artist in the whole world." Rose smiled shyly. The star necklace glinted at her throat. Hope the doll sat propped against her wheelchair. The sound of footsteps made both girls look up. Dominic approached slowly. He stopped in front of Rose's wheelchair and did something he rarely did for anyone. He knelt down, lowered himself to her level, looked directly into her green eyes, so like his own, so like Elena's. Rose stared at him with uncertainty. No adult had ever knelt before her. No adult had ever looked at her as if she mattered. "Rose," Dominic said softly, "I need to ask you something very important." The little girl nodded nervously, clutching Hope tighter. "Would you like to come home with me? Would you like to be my daughter?" Rose's eyes went wide. Her lips parted in shock. "Your daughter?" "Yes." Dominic reached out and gently took her small hand in his. "I know you've been alone for a long time. I know people have made you feel like you weren't wanted. But I want you, Rose. I want you to be part of my family. I want to be your daddy." Rose couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The word echoed in her mind like a bell ringing in an empty church. "Daddy. You want me?" she whispered. "Even with my legs? Even with the wheelchair?" Dominic's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the same moment. "Rose, listen to me." His voice was thick with emotion. "The wheelchair doesn't matter. Your legs don't matter. What matters is who you are inside. And inside, you are my daughter. You always have been." The tears came then. Rose couldn't stop them. They poured down her cheeks like rain after a long drought. "Daddy," she sobbed, throwing her arms around Dominic's neck. "Daddy, Daddy." It was the first time in her life she had ever spoken that word, the first time she had ever held someone who wanted to hold her back. Dominic wrapped his arms around his daughter, his stolen child, his Rose. He buried his face in her golden hair and let his own tears fall silently. "I'm here now," he murmured. "I'm here, and I'm never letting you go." Lily watched with tears streaming down her own face. Then she couldn't wait any longer. She threw herself into the embrace, wrapping her small arms around both of them. "Rose, we're going to be real sisters forever." Rose laughed through her tears. "Really, really truly, always and forever." Dominic held both his daughters close, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against his chest. In that moment, the rage and pain and grief faded into the background. There was still danger ahead. Webb and Romano were still out there, still plotting. But right now, in this moment, Dominic had everything that mattered. He had his family, and he swore silently, to Elena, to himself, to whatever power might be listening. No one would ever tear them apart again. The iron gates of the Ashford mansion swung open, and for the first time in her life, Rose saw what a real home looked like. Her eyes grew impossibly wide as Dominic pushed her wheelchair up the cobblestone path. The mansion rose before her like a castle from one of her dreams. Tall windows gleamed in the afternoon sun. Ivy climbed the stone walls. A garden bursting with flowers lined the walkway. "This is where you live?" Rose whispered, hardly daring to believe. "This is where we live," Dominic corrected gently. "This is your home now, Rose." Lily grabbed the handles of the wheelchair from her father. "Let me show her everything, Daddy. Please, please, please." Dominic smiled and stepped aside. "Go ahead, Princess. Give your sister the grand tour." Lily pushed Rose through the front door with enthusiasm that nearly sent them crashing into a decorative table. The entrance hall was enormous, with marble floors and a crystal chandelier that scattered rainbows across the walls. "This is the foyer," Lily announced in her most grown-up voice. "And over here is the living room. It has the biggest TV in the whole world. And there is the kitchen. Cook makes the best chocolate chip cookies. You'll love them." Rose couldn't speak. She could only stare at everything around her. The paintings on the walls, the soft rugs beneath her wheels, the flowers in elegant vases. Everything was beautiful. Everything was clean and warm and perfect. "And now," Lily said dramatically, pushing Rose toward a hallway, "the most important part. Your room." They stopped in front of a door painted soft pink. Lily reached up and turned the handle. The room inside made Rose's heart stop. It was beautiful, more beautiful than anything she had ever imagined. The walls were painted a gentle shade of rose, matching her name. White curtains framed a large window that looked out over the garden. A bed with a pink canopy sat against one wall, piled high with soft pillows and a fluffy comforter. Everything in the room was designed for her. The bed was low enough to transfer from her wheelchair easily. The closet had rods at accessible heights. A special desk with space for her chair sat near the window, art supplies already arranged neatly on top. "Daddy had it made just for you," Lily said proudly. He wanted everything to be perfect. Rose wheeled herself slowly into the room. She reached out and touched the bedspread with trembling fingers. She touched the curtains, the pillows, the wooden frame of the bed. "Is this real?" she whispered. "Is this really mine?" Dominic had followed quietly behind them. He stood in the doorway, watching his daughter explore her new room. "It's really yours," he said softly. "Forever." Rose spun her wheelchair around to face him. Tears were streaming down her face again. "I've never had my own room before. I've never had my own anything before." Dominic crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. He took her small hands in his. "Everything I have is yours now, Rose. You are my daughter. This is your home, and nothing will ever change that." Rose threw her arms around his neck and sobbed into his shoulder. These were different tears than she had cried at the orphanage. These were tears of overwhelming joy. That evening, the three of them sat around the dining table for their first family meal. Cook had prepared Rose's favorite foods, which Lily had carefully described during their visits to the orphanage. The dining room echoed with chatter and laughter. Lily talked nonstop about all the things she wanted to show Rose. The garden, the library, the secret hiding spot behind the rose bushes. Rose listened with shining eyes, occasionally adding her own quiet comments. She still couldn't quite believe this was happening. Part of her kept waiting to wake up back in her narrow bed at St. Mary's. Dominic watched his daughters from the head of the table. His heart was full, but also aching. 6 years. He had missed 6 years of Rose's life. Her first words, her first drawings, Countless nights when she had cried herself to sleep, alone and unwanted. He would never get those years back, but he swore to himself that he would make every day from now on count. At bedtime, Lily insisted that Rose sleep in her room. "Just for tonight," she pleaded. "Please, Daddy, I want to tell her stories." Dominic couldn't refuse. He helped transfer Rose into Lily's bed, where the two girls snuggled under the covers together, their golden heads side by side on the pillows. Once upon a time, Lily began in a dramatic whisper, there were two princesses who looked exactly alike. Rose giggled softly, hugging Hope the doll to her chest. The star necklace glinted at her throat. Dominic stood in the doorway, watching his daughters. Lily's voice grew softer as the story continued. Rose's eyes grew heavier. Eventually, both girls drifted into sleep, their hands intertwined between them. The sight broke something open in Dominic's chest. This was what a family looked like. This was what he had been missing for 6 long years. He stepped back quietly and pulled the door almost closed, leaving just a crack for the hallway light. "I will protect you," he whispered into the darkness. "Both of you. No matter what it costs, somewhere in the night, danger was circling closer. But for now, in this moment, there was only peace. And Dominic let himself believe, just for one night, that everything would be all right. In a dimly lit apartment across the city, Dr. Marcus Webb paced back and forth like a caged animal. His hands trembled as he clutched his phone, reading the message that had just arrived from one of his informants. Ashford found Sarah Miller. She talked. The words burned into his eyes. 30 years of planning, 20 years of careful deception, all of it crumbling because of one weak-willed nurse who couldn't keep her mouth shut. Webb dialed the number he knew by heart. It rang twice before a cold voice answered. This had better be important. He knows. Vincent. Webb's voice cracked with panic. Ashford found Sarah Miller. She told him everything. About the twins. About what I did to Elena. Everything. Silence stretched across the line. When Vincent Romano spoke again, his voice was ice. "You assured me this was handled. You said there were no loose ends. I thought there weren't. I thought she was too scared to ever talk." Webb ran a hand through his silver hair, but Ashford's men found her. "She's probably under his protection now." "Then we have a problem. What do we do? If Ashford comes after me, calm yourself, Marcus." Romano's tone was sharp. "Panic is what gets men killed. We simply need to adjust our strategy." Webb stopped pacing. "What do you mean?" "Ashford's weakness has always been his family, his wife, his children. We used that weakness once before. We'll use it again. The girls? Both of them. The cripple he just rescued and the other one." Romano's voice carried a cruel smile. "We take them both. Ashford will have no choice but to surrender everything. His empire, his power, his life." Webb's blood ran cold. "You're talking about kidnapping children. I'm talking about winning." Romano's patience was wearing thin. "You've had 30 years to avenge your father, Marcus. 30 years of waiting and scheming. Are you going to lose your nerve now, when we're this close?" Webb closed his eyes. He thought of his father, Antonio Castellano, gunned down by the Ashfords like a dog in the street. He thought of the promise he had made standing over that grave, the promise to destroy everyone who carried the Ashford name. "No," he said quietly. "I won't lose my nerve." "Good. Then let me handle this. My men have been watching the mansion. Ashford leaves tomorrow evening for a meeting downtown. The guards will be minimal. That's when we strike. And after, when you have the children," Romano laughed softly, "then Dominic Ashford will learn what it truly means to suffer, just as you always wanted." The line went dead. The next afternoon, the Ashford mansion basked in warm sunlight. Birds sang in the trees. A gentle breeze carried the scent of roses through the garden. Rose sat in her wheelchair beneath her favorite oak tree, a sketchpad balanced on her lap. She was drawing the garden, trying to capture the way the light fell through the leaves. Nearby, Lily lay on a blanket spread across the grass, a book of fairy tales open in front of her. She was reading aloud, making different voices for each character. And then the princess said to the dragon, "You don't scare me, you big scaly lizard." Lily growled dramatically, making Rose giggle. "The princess was very brave," Rose said. "Of course she was. All princesses are brave." Lily rolled onto her back and looked up at the clouds. "Rose, do you think we're like princesses?" Rose considered the question. "Maybe. We have a big house like a castle, and Daddy is kind of like a king, a very serious king," Lily agreed solemnly. Then she burst into giggles, but a nice one. They continued playing as the afternoon faded into evening. The shadows grew longer. The air grew cooler. Eventually, A maid called them inside for dinner. Neither girl noticed the man watching from beyond the garden wall. Neither saw him lift a phone to his ear and speak quietly into it. The targets are inside. Ashford left 20 minutes ago. Security is light. We move at midnight. Night fell over the mansion like a dark blanket. The house grew quiet. Lights flickered off one by one until only the soft glow of hallway lamps remained. In Lily's bedroom, the two sisters slept peacefully. Rose had her arms wrapped around Hope the doll. Lily's hand rested on her sister's, even in sleep. Outside, shadows moved through the darkness. Black-clad figures scaled the garden wall without a sound. They spread out across the grounds, disabling security cameras, neutralizing guards with silent precision. The leader of the group checked his watch. Midnight exactly. He gave the signal. The attack on the Ashford mansion had begun. The clock on the wall read 12:17 when the first window shattered. 30 minutes away, Dominic sat in his downtown office, reviewing documents for a business acquisition. It was supposed to be a routine meeting, finished within the hour. He had left extra guards at the mansion. He had kissed both daughters goodnight before leaving. He thought they would be safe. He was wrong. At the mansion, chaos erupted in seconds. Romano's men moved with military precision. They had studied the security patterns for days. They knew exactly where the cameras pointed, exactly when the guards made their rounds, exactly which doors were weakest. The first team disabled the exterior guards with tranquilizer darts. Silent, efficient, no alarms. The second team cut the power to the security system. The cameras went dark. The motion sensors died. The third team breached the main entrance. By the time the household staff realized something was wrong, it was already too late. In Lily's bedroom, Rose woke to the sound of breaking glass somewhere in the house. Her eyes snapped open. The room was dark, lit only by the moonlight streaming through the window. Beside her, Lily stirred but didn't wake. Rose's heart began to pound. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. "Lily," she whispered urgently, shaking her sister. "Lily, wake up." What?" Lily mumbled sleepily. "Something's happening." I heard the bedroom door exploded inward. Wood splintered across the floor. Two men in black masks rushed into the room, their footsteps heavy on the carpet. Lily screamed. Rose's body moved before her mind could catch up. She threw herself in front of her sister, spreading her arms wide even though she knew she couldn't stop anyone. "Stay away from her!" Rose shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. One of the men laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Look at this. The cripple thinks she can protect someone." He grabbed Rose's wheelchair and shoved it aside. Rose tumbled onto the bed, her useless legs tangling in the sheets. "Run, Lily!" Rose screamed. "Find the back door! Find Daddy!" Lily tried. She scrambled off the bed and ran toward the bathroom, where a servant's corridor connected to the rest of the house. She made it 3 steps before a third man appeared in the bathroom doorway, blocking her escape. "Going somewhere, little princess?" Lily backed away, tears streaming down her face. Please don't hurt us." The leader of the group surveyed the 2 girls with cold eyes. His gaze lingered on Rose, crumpled on the bed, struggling to push herself upright without her chair. "This one can't even walk," he sneered. Romano said to bring them both, but honestly, what's the point of this one? She's worthless. Something snapped inside Lily. "Don't say that about my sister," she screamed, launching herself at the man with tiny fists swinging. "She's not worthless. Don't you dare touch her." The man caught Lily easily, lifting her off the ground with one arm. She kicked and scratched and bit, fighting with everything she had. "Feisty," he muttered. "Bag them both. We're running out of time." Rose watched helplessly as a man approached her with a cloth bag. Tears blurred her vision. "Lily," she sobbed. "Lily, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "It's okay, Rose." Lily's voice was muffled but determined. "Daddy will come. Daddy always comes." The bags came down over their heads, plunging them into darkness. 23 minutes later, Dominic's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Normally he would ignore it, but something made him answer. "Mr. Ashford?" The voice was unfamiliar, mocking. "I have something that belongs to you. 2 somethings, actually." Dominic's blood turned to ice. "If you've touched them, relax. They're alive. For now." A pause. "But that could change very quickly if you don't cooperate." The line went dead. For 3 seconds, Dominic sat frozen. Then the ice in his veins turned to fire. He dialed Dante. "Boss, I was just about to call you. The mansion, I know." Dominic's voice was barely human. It was the voice of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Mobilize everyone, every soldier, every contact, every resource we have. What's the play? Dominic stood and walked to the window. The city lights glittered below him like scattered diamonds, cold and indifferent. This is war, he said quietly. And Romano just made the last mistake of his life. The room was cold and dark. Concrete walls, no windows. A single, bare light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting weak yellow light that barely reached the corners. Rose and Lily huddled together on a thin mattress that had been thrown on the floor. Their hands were no longer bound, but it didn't matter. There was no way out. The heavy metal door was locked from the outside, and even if it wasn't, Rose couldn't walk and Lily was too small to carry her. They were trapped. Lily's whole body was shaking. Her teeth chattered from cold and fear. Tears had dried on her cheeks, leaving salty tracks that glistened in the dim light. "Rose," she whimpered. "I'm scared. I'm so scared." Rose pulled her sister closer, wrapping her thin arms around Lily's trembling form. She was terrified too. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. But she couldn't let Lily see that. She had to be strong. She was the big sister now. "It's okay," Rose whispered, her voice steadier than she felt. "Daddy will come. He'll find us." "How do you know?" "Because that's what daddies do. They protect their children. And our daddy is the strongest daddy in the whole world." Lily pressed her face against Rose's shoulder. "What if they hurt us before he gets here?" Rose didn't have an answer for that. She couldn't lie to her sister. So instead, she did the only thing she could think of. She began to sing. It was a song she had made up during the lonely nights at St. Mary's. A song she used to sing to herself when the darkness felt too heavy and the loneliness too deep. The melody was simple, the words even simpler. "When the night is dark and long, when everything feels wrong, close your eyes and hold on tight. Morning always follows night." Her voice wavered at first, thin and uncertain, but as she continued, it grew stronger. The words floated through the cold room like tiny sparks of warmth. "You are never all alone. Love will always guide you home. Through the storm and through the rain, we will find our way again." Lily's shaking slowly subsided. She listened to her sister's voice, letting it wrap around her like a blanket. When the song ended, Lily looked up at Rose with wide, wondering eyes. "That was beautiful. Where did you learn that song?" "I made it up, at the orphanage, when I was scared and alone." Rose's voice cracked slightly. "I never thought I'd have anyone to sing it to." Lily squeezed Rose's hand tightly. "You're the bravest sister in the whole world," she said solemnly. Rose shook her head. "No. I'm just a sister who loves you more than anything in the whole world." They held each other in the darkness, two small hearts beating together against the fear. In another part of the warehouse, Vincent Romano sat in a leather chair, watching a video feed on his phone. The screen showed two little girls huddled together on a dirty mattress, one with useless legs, one with tear-stained cheeks, both with golden hair and green eyes that reminded him uncomfortably of Dominic Ashford. "Touching," he murmured sarcastically. Dr. Webb stood nearby, wringing his hands nervously. "What now? Ashford won't just surrender. You know that." "Of course he won't. Not immediately." Romano smiled coldly. "But everyone has a breaking point, even Dominic Ashford." He pulled up Dominic's number and attached the video file. Below it, he typed a message. "Your daughters are alive. For now. If you want them to stay that way, you will sign over complete control of the Ashford Empire to me. All assets, all territories, everything. You have 24 hours. Miss the deadline, and I start sending you pieces of them." He pressed send. Across the city, Dominic's phone buzzed. He opened the message, watched the video, read the words beneath it. His daughters, his babies, cowering in a dark room, Rose singing to comfort Lily, Lily crying in her sister's arms. The phone cracked in his grip. The screen shattered, cutting into his palm. Blood dripped onto the floor, but he didn't notice. Dante stood across the room, watching his boss with growing unease. He had seen Dominic angry before. He had seen him ruthless, merciless, cold as ice. But he had never seen this. This was something beyond anger, beyond rage. This was the fury of a father whose children had been taken from him. Twice. "Boss?" Dante ventured carefully. Dominic looked up. His eyes were empty of everything except one thing. Absolute, unwavering purpose. "Romano thinks he can threaten my children and live," Dominic said quietly. "He thinks he can take what's mine and walk away." He dropped the broken phone onto the desk. He just signed his own death warrant. It took Dante's team 4 hours to trace the video's origin. 4 hours of digital forensics, satellite imagery, and interrogating every informant the Ashford family had ever cultivated. The location was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, an old shipping facility that had been empty for years. The perfect place to hide something, or someone. Dominic stood in the armory beneath the Ashford mansion, strapping weapons to his body with mechanical precision. A pistol at his hip, a knife at his ankle, a second gun holstered beneath his jacket. Dante watched with concern. "Boss, you don't need to go yourself. Let us handle this. That's what we're trained for." "No, Dominic, please." "If something happens to you," Dominic turned, and the look in his eyes silenced Dante immediately. "My daughters are in that warehouse," Dominic said, his voice dangerously calm. "My children. My blood. No one takes what is mine and lives. No one." He pulled on a black tactical vest. "Tonight, I don't send soldiers to fight my battles. Tonight, I fight myself, and anyone who gets between me and my girls will not see tomorrow." Dante had served Dominic for 15 years. He had seen his boss make ruthless decisions, order terrible things, build an empire on fear and power, but he had never seen this cold, absolute determination. This was not a crime boss seeking revenge. This was a father going to war. The Ashford convoy arrived at the warehouse at exactly 3 a.m. 50 men, armed to the teeth, ready for battle. Romano's guards never stood a chance. The first explosion took out the main gate. Before the smoke cleared, Ashford soldiers poured through the gap like a black tide. Gunfire erupted across the compound. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness. Men shouted, screamed, fell. Dominic moved through the chaos like a ghost. He didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. Every movement was calculated, precise, deadly. Anyone who raised a weapon toward him dropped before they could pull the trigger. His mind was empty of everything except one thought: find them, find the girls. He fought his way through the outer buildings, clearing room after room. Each empty space drove him forward faster, more desperately. "Dante!" he shouted into his radio. "The basement. There must be a basement, east side of the main building. Service entrance. I'm clearing a path now." Dominic ran. In the dark room underground, Rose and Lily heard the explosions. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Distant gunfire crackled like fireworks. Lily whimpered and pressed closer to Rose. "What's happening?" Rose listened to the sounds of battle drawing closer. Her heart swelled with desperate hope. "It's Daddy," she breathed. "Daddy's here. He came for us." "How do you know?" "I just know." Rose squeezed her sister tight. "I told you he would come. I told you." The gunfire grew louder, closer. They could hear shouting now, footsteps pounding above them. Then everything went silent. Lily stopped breathing. Rose held her so tightly it hurt. The metal door groaned. A thunderous impact made them both jump. Another impact. The door buckled inward. On the third kick, it flew open. Dominic stood in the doorway. His clothes were torn. Blood streaked his face and hands, though most of it wasn't his. His chest heaved with exertion. His eyes were wild, red-rimmed, almost feral. But the moment he saw his daughters huddled together on that dirty mattress, everything else fell away. "Daddy!" Lily screamed. "Daddy!" Rose sobbed. Dominic crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees. He gathered both girls into his arms and held them so tightly they could barely breathe. "I'm here," he gasped. "I'm here. You're safe now. You're safe." Lily was crying. Rose was crying. Dominic's shoulders shook with the force of his own emotions. "I knew you'd come," Rose whispered against his chest. "I knew it." Dominic pulled back just enough to look at both their faces. His thumbs wiped tears from their cheeks. "No one will ever take you from me again," he promised. His voice cracked. "Never. Do you understand? Never." He held them close again, surrounded by the sounds of the battle still raging above. But in that moment, in that cold, dark room, there was only a father and his daughters, reunited at last. The war wasn't over yet, but the most important victory had already been won. Dominic held his daughters for a moment longer, memorizing the feel of their small bodies against his chest. Then he gently pulled away. "Dante," he called. His right hand appeared in the doorway, weapon drawn, eyes scanning for threats. "Take them to the car. Get them somewhere safe. Don't stop for anything." Dante nodded and moved toward the girls. Rose grabbed Dominic's hand. "Daddy, come with us, please." Dominic looked into his daughter's eyes, so like Elena's, so full of fear and love. "I'll be right behind you, sweetheart. But first, Daddy has to finish something. Promise you'll come back?" He kissed her forehead, then Lily's. "I promise." Dante lifted Lily into his arms and guided Rose's wheelchair with his other hand. As they disappeared down the corridor, Dominic turned in the opposite direction. There was still work to be done. The main floor of the warehouse was a battlefield. Bodies littered the concrete. The air smelled of gunpowder and blood. Dominic found Vincent Romano in what had once been the foreman's office. Romano was cornered. 3 of his guards lay dead at his feet. He stood behind an overturned desk, a pistol in his shaking hand. Ashford. Romano tried to sound confident, but fear cracked through his voice. This doesn't have to end this way. We can negotiate. I have money, resources. We can make a deal. Dominic stepped over the bodies without looking down. You touched my children, he said quietly. There is no deal. They're just kids. They're not worth dying over. Dominic's expression didn't change. They're worth everything. Romano raised his gun and fired. The bullet went wide. Dominic didn't flinch. He closed the distance in 3 quick strides. His hand clamped around Romano's wrist, twisting until the gun clattered to the floor. Romano swung with his free hand. Dominic caught the punch, bent the arm backward, and drove his elbow into Romano's face. The fight was short, brutal, one-sided. Within minutes, Romano was on his knees, blood streaming from his broken nose. His arm bent at an unnatural angle. Please, he gasped. Please, I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Dominic looked down at the man who had terrorized his family, who had kidnapped his children, who had threatened to send him pieces of his daughters. No, Dominic said. I won't. He nodded to 2 of his men. They dragged Romano away. The screaming faded into the distance. Dr. Marcus Webb was found trying to escape through a back exit. Dante's men brought him before Dominic, throwing him to his knees on the blood-stained concrete. Webb looked up at the man he had betrayed for 30 years. His face was pale, his eyes wild with a mixture of terror and defiance. 30 years, Webb screamed. 30 years I waited. Your father murdered mine like an animal in the street. I was entitled to justice. Dominic crouched down to Webb's level. Justice, he repeated coldly. You call killing my wife justice? Stealing my newborn daughter? Leaving her to rot in an orphanage for 6 years? She was supposed to die, Webb spat. Both of your children were supposed to die. Your entire bloodline was supposed to end. But it didn't. Dominic's voice was ice. My father is dead. Your father is dead. But my daughters are alive, and you have nothing. Webb laughed then, a high, broken sound. You think this is over? You think killing me changes anything? The Castellano name will. The Castellano name dies with you. Dominic stood. Take him, he ordered. He goes where Romano went. Let them keep each other company. Webb screamed as they dragged him away. Curses. Threats. Pleas. Dominic heard none of it. He walked out of the warehouse and into the cool night air. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten. The first pale streaks of dawn painted the horizon in shades of pink and gold. Dominic stopped and looked up at the sky. It was over. The vendetta that had haunted his family for decades was finally finished. Webb and Romano would face the justice of the underworld, a justice far more permanent than any court could deliver. Elena's death had been avenged. Rose had been found. His family was whole again. Dominic closed his eyes and let the morning light wash over his face. For the first time in 6 years, he felt something that resembled peace. The Ashford mansion stood quiet in the days that followed. The broken windows had been repaired, the shattered doors replaced, the bloodstains scrubbed away until no visible trace of the attack remained. But the invisible wounds took longer to heal. Rose and Lily slept in the same bed every night now. Neither could bear to be alone in the darkness. They would fall asleep holding hands, their golden heads touching on the pillow, finding comfort in each other's presence. The nightmares came often. Lily would wake screaming, reaching for someone who wasn't there, crying for her daddy, until Dominic rushed in to hold her. Rose would jolt awake in cold sweats, dreaming of dark rooms and masked men, of being dragged away from everything she had just learned to love. But they had each other, and slowly, night by night, the dreams grew less frequent. Dominic hired the best child psychologist in New York. Dr. Amanda Chen came to the mansion 3 times a week, spending hours with each girl, helping them process the trauma in age-appropriate ways. She taught them coping techniques, breathing exercises, how to turn their fears into stories they could control, how to find safety in their own minds when the world felt dangerous. And she taught Dominic something too. Your daughters don't need a protector right now, Dr. Chen told him one afternoon. They need a father. They need presence. They need to know that you're not going anywhere. Dominic took her words to heart. He stepped back from the daily operations of the family business. Dante took over the meetings, the negotiations, the endless stream of decisions that running an empire required. For the first time in his adult life, Dominic delegated almost everything. His priority now was breakfast with his daughters, reading stories at bedtime, sitting in the garden while they drew pictures. Being there, truly there, in a way he had never allowed himself to be before. One evening, as the sun set over the garden, Dominic sat on a bench watching Rose and Lily play. Lily was pushing Rose's wheelchair in circles, both girls laughing as they spun faster and faster. When they finally stopped, dizzy and breathless, Rose wheeled herself over to her father. Her face was serious. "Daddy, can I tell you something?" "Anything." "Sweetheart," Rose looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously in her lap. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared that one day you'll realize I'm too much trouble. Because I can't walk. Because I need help with things other kids don't need help with. I'm scared you'll leave me, like everyone else always did." Dominic's heart cracked open. He slid off the bench and knelt in front of his daughter's wheelchair, taking her small hands in his. "Rose, look at me." She raised her eyes, green, meeting gray. "You are my daughter," Dominic said firmly. "You were my daughter the moment you were born, even though I didn't know it. You were my daughter during every year you spent in that orphanage, even though I couldn't find you. And you are my daughter now, forever, no matter what." Tears began to slip down Rose's cheeks. "The wheelchair doesn't define you," Dominic continued. "It's just how you move through the world. It's not who you are. Who you are is brave and kind and creative and loving. Who you are is my Rose. And nothing in this world, could ever make me leave you." Rose threw her arms around his neck and sobbed. But these were different tears. Not tears of fear or sadness. These were tears of healing. Tears that washed away years of doubt and rejection and loneliness. Lily ran over and joined the hug, wrapping her arms around both of them. "We're a family," she declared. "Forever and ever." "Forever and ever?" Rose echoed through her tears. Dominic held his daughters close, feeling their hearts beat against his chest. The road ahead would not be easy. There would still be bad nights and difficult days. The scars of what they had endured would never fully disappear, but they would face it all together, as a family, and that made all the difference. Dear viewers, this story carries a profound message that resonates deeply with our lives. It reminds us that family is not just about blood or biology. Family is about choosing to love someone unconditionally, about showing up for each other in the darkest moments, about never giving up on the people who matter most. Rose spent 6 years believing she was unworthy of love because of her disability. How many people in our world feel the same way? How many children wait in orphanages, hoping someone will see past their differences and recognize their worth? This story teaches us that every person deserves to be loved for who they are, not judged for what they cannot do. It shows us that healing is possible, even after the deepest wounds, and it reminds us that the strongest families are often the ones that are built through choice, through struggle, through the decision to stand together no matter what. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our daily uploads. Hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. We would love to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever experienced a moment where someone chose you when you felt unchosen? Or perhaps you have been the one to offer that unconditional acceptance to another? Please share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Your stories inspire us just as much as we hope ours inspire you. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of our community. We wish you good health, happiness, and peace in your daily life. May you always find the courage to love and be loved. Goodbye for now, and we will see you in the next video.